Minister, for coming in and for the continuing support that she offers to my office. Minister, my question relates to maybe provide greater clarity in relation to antigen testing in schools and the way it is to be implemented within the school setting, and if it will be used within both primary and secondary school settings, and what protocol will be operating for same, if you please.
Thank you very much, Deputy, and appreciate the question. The approach to supporting schools to operate safely during COVID-19 has been to follow, as I've outlined previously, and implement public health advice. A range of measures have been implemented across schools, including social distancing, enhanced cleaning and, of course, as you would be aware, in some settings, mask wearing for students and in all settings for staff. As of the 27th of September 2021, following a recommendation from NEFIT, a decision was taken to cease routine contact tracing of asymptomatic close contacts in children older than 3 months to under 13 years outside of the household setting, including those attending primary education and childcare settings. Contact tracing continues for those over 13 years, including those attending post-primary schools. Schools are still required to undertake the two most important actions to prevent the introduction and spread of COVID-19 and other respiratory viruses by ensuring no one with new acute symptoms attend class and that all recommended infection prevention and control measures are in place in line with school COVID response plans. The Department of Health and the HSC, working in collaboration with the Department of Education, announced last week, as you've referenced, a programme in which antigen tests will be made available to children in primary schools when a case of COVID-19 arises. Parents and guardians of a primary school child who is a confirmed case of COVID-19 following a PCR test are asked to inform their school's principal. The school principal will then inform the parents of other children in the pod of a confirmed case. Where there are 2 cases in a class in more than one pod in a 7-day period, antigen tests will be offered to every child in the class. No personal details of the child will be shared, of course. These parents will be provided with the option to receive free antigen tests for their child, which they will be able to order for delivery to their home. It is important that parents inform principals quickly if a child receives a PCR detected test for COVID-19. By doing this, the choice to participate in antigen testing can be offered to other parents. It is important that everyone continues to follow all of the public health advice in using this new programme. It is not mandatory for children to participate in antigen testing. Children who are in a pod where a child is tested positive for COVID-19 can continue to attend school, whether they participate in antigen testing or not. Thank you.
Minister, you might not be aware, but I actually brought antigen testing to NEFIT in April, May of 2020. I'm somebody who was promoting this technology for quite a while, and I think the antigen tests for infectiousness, and I think this is something is very important, and I think we're probably being too slow about rolling it out in the way we're proposing to roll it out. And I accept it has limitations in terms of its effectiveness, whether it's in a managed setting or a less formal setting. But what I would say is, and I said this in the House recently, I have a sister-in-law in the UK who's a school secretary where they are managing antigen testing for all of the schools, 900 pupils, and doing it very successfully by 2 antigen tests for all school pupils every week. And I think this is something that we should be looking at. I think that the problem here is that the horse will have bolted while we're trying to close the stable door in a lot of cases with what we're proposing. And I think for that reason I would ask you, maybe, and maybe it is difficult considering you're referencing public health advice, but I think, you know, what we're proposing is not significant enough and not often enough.
Minister. Thank you very much. And again, Deputy, I do appreciate the very positive approach you take here and the generosity with which you share your experience. I do want to say, in terms of our schools as they exist, comparable to other schools, there are very significant infection prevention and control measures in our schools, I would venture to say, and they are not comparable to the lack of them in other jurisdictions. Just in terms of the antigen testing, you will appreciate that there have been very differing views in terms of antigen testing and their utility and their effectiveness and all of that. But according as, I suppose, new evidence becomes available, as we have found throughout COVID, then implementation measures and their recommendations are altered. And so we now have the expert view of the CMO, who, having reviewed evidence, believes that there is a role for antigen testing in our school, but is very clear to say that it is merely an additional tool, and it will be seen and implemented in that respect, and all the other infection prevention and control measures will continue in our schools as well to support the operation of our schools.
And thank you, Minister, and I accept the response as you have given it to me, but as I say, I don't think we're doing enough. I heard the CMO on radio the other morning, and basically he wasn't gushing in his praise for what antigen testing could do, and I think that's a mistake. The other thing I'd point out to you, there's a significant cost differential between PCR testing and antigen testing, probably at a rate of 10 to 1. And therefore it suggests that we could be doing a lot of antigen testing for a large amount of money that we're spending. Could I just offer you one other piece of advice, if I may, for the teachers in the country? There's a lot of evidence now that supports the supplementation of vitamin D, and despite again that NEFIT or the CMO will not endorse this, I can tell you most medics in the country are supplementing vitamin D, and I would ask that that message goes out to teachers at the moment. We live in a northern latitude in this country. We are not making enough vitamin D, and there is significant correlation between adverse COVID and low levels of vitamin D, and maybe that's something you might like to put out as a public health message at some point, Minister.
Thank you, Deputy. I just want to, just in terms of the antigen testing, as I have the opportunity, I do want to say that there is a significant body of work under, obviously it is a public health measure and it is being led by the HSE, but there is a significant body of work underway where guidelines will now be made available to schools, to principals, to school staff, and to parents, and that will all be communicated in advance of Monday the 29th. Also to say as well that how correctly to utilise and to use the antigen testing will also form part of that communication, which I think is very important, and there has been particular significance given to that by all the public health officials, that we would know exactly how best to use them and utilise them within the school. I want to be clear as well that, and I know I have said it previously, all of the measures that are recommended to us by public health, we have made available to our schools and we have resourced them. This is an additional tool. We will continue to listen and to work with public health, and any further recommendations or requirements that are necessary, we will also implement.
Thank you, Minister.